We'll just wait for people to start joining. Good evening, everybody. If you've just got home from work and you're making the effort to join us, thank you very much. Yeah, here they come. I'll just give it a few more seconds, Jo.
Yes.
We'll see how many we get. See if we get more than last time. Excellent. Okay, sort of slow down a little bit, so I think I'll begin. So good evening, everybody. Welcome to our fourth BV&A webinar of 2021. My name is Alex Taylor. I am the BV&A Junior Vice President, and tonight we're going to be talking about creating a positive mindset and feeling good about life, which I'm sure you'll all agree has been quite a challenge over the last few months, well, year nearly now, actually, isn't it? So this webinar is very much needed, and we could definitely do with a bit more positivity in our lives at the moment. So yeah, I'm really glad that we've got our guests here this evening. I'm delighted to be joined by Jo Oakden, our president. Hi, Jo. And Jo's going to be co-hosting this session with me, where we'll be chatting to Rue Davies, i.e. the Mojo coach, about how we can help ourselves, hi Rue, to feel more positive during these challenging times, as well as discussing the importance of Vetlife and how its services can benefit veterinary nurses with Rosie Allister. Hi Rosie, how are you doing?
Yeah.
As before, this is quite an informal discussion, and we welcome any questions that people have. So I'll just introduce our guests properly. I'll start with our first guest, Rue. Rue's also known as the Mojo Coach and is the go-to coach in the UK for people who want to find their passion, positivity and purpose, 3 Ps. Her practical approach helps you to identify and clear any blockers to your progress, gain the vital clarity on your purpose and direction so that you can cultivate a helpful mindset and smash your goals. I really like that. She's a pretty unique coach. Yes, she is. I can say she definitely is. She wears a few hats, the life coach, business coach, leadership coach, strengths coach, and a mentor. Whatever hat she's wearing, she helps her clients to thrive in their personal and professional lives. So that's Rue, and I'll just move on to our second guest, which is Rosie. Rosie is a leading campaigner and researcher for and about veterinary mental health, as well as a veterinary educator, the manager of the Vetlife helpline, and a member of the RCVS Mind Matters Initiative Task Force. Her work has undoubtedly had a significant impact on the veterinary profession, both on a practical and mental health support level, as well as helping to raise awareness of and shift attitudes towards mental ill health. During her tenure at Vetlife, at the Vetlife helpline, for example, she has grown the service to encompass 70 volunteers and developed a confidential email support system and overseen a 10-fold increase in contacts since 2014. Which is pretty amazing. So that's our introductions done. If anyone has any questions, if you can just pop them into the Q&A box, please, and we'll try and answer them as we go along. We might have to do some of them towards the end of the webinar as well. And we also have some council members monitoring the Facebook Live as well. So if you have any questions and you're watching on Facebook, then please do pop them in the chat there too. So I'm just going to hand over to Jo, who's going to start with our first question, if that's all right, Jo.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. So we've been really looking forward to this webinar, just some different sort of coping exercises, things to keep us on a positive mindset. I think the first question that I'd like to ask is something that I struggle with as well, and it's something that I notice other people struggling with, and it's something that we need to kind of get a grip on. So it was kind of, how do I teach myself to manage the things that are out of my control, of which there is a lot at the moment that we can't do anything about, but even just to recognise that it's out of our control without getting increasingly stressed and frustrated about it.
Yeah, sure. So this is something that I work with people a lot, and the first thing is to understand identify what's triggering that feeling of out of control, because feeling overwhelmed, stress, anxious, worry, that is triggered by many things, but often when you are not feeling in control. So think about specifically what the trigger is for you. So that could be watching the news, it could be social media, it could be general uncertainty about career prospects, financial prospects. It could be increased workload. So try and identify, first of all, what are your triggers, and ask yourself, how is this serving me? Is this helpful? So really starting to try and switch on the self-awareness to understand what is it that are triggering those feelings, and then ask yourself, okay, how is this helping me? Is this a helpful thought? Is this triggering helpful behavior? And I'm a massive fan of kind of moving away from having a positive mindset and how to do things positively or the right way. If you can switch that to say, okay, how can I cultivate a helpful mindset? And that's where you can start thinking about, okay, right here, right now, in this context, what's going to help me? And then you can start understanding, okay, so watching the news every day when I wake up, if that's what you used to do kind of last year, you used to wake up, put the news on. I was certainly one of those people. It was kind of my routine to make a nice cup of tea and watch the morning news. Quite early on last year, I realized that was no longer serving me well. I, for one, now watch very, very little news, and I'm quite controlled about my exposure to things like that, because it was triggering, it was triggering sort of anxiety and lack of sleep. So trying to switch on and ask yourself, how is this serving me? Is this helpful? And I have got a really practical technique for managing things that are in and out of your control. I don't know whether you want to save that for later, or I can crack on now. It's up to you.
Yeah, quite happy for you to do that now.
Okay, so a really great exercise is for you to get a bit of paper and just get everything out on that piece of paper that's filling your head. So think about everything. It can be what's happening at work. It could be that you need to pay the vet bill. It could be that you need to do a food shop. It could be that you need to listen to a podcast, whatever it may be. Everything, work and personal life, because we haven't got two heads, right? Okay, we've got one headspace. We've got one mindset. So everything that's filling your head. And then grab a highlighter and highlight the things that you can control and influence. It's really important for you to, first of all, identify the things that you can control, the things that are in your control, because when you can focus your energy there, it means that you can have an impact. And when you're having an impact, you start to feel more fulfilled, more energized, more productive. We can spend a lot of time circling and investing time and energy in things that we can't control. So when lockdown's going to end, the effects of Brexit, if primary schools are going to open, etc., etc. When are we still going to be social distancing at the end of the year? All of that stuff is totally out of our control. So recognizing that, and then minimizing what we call areas of concern. So the things that you can't control are things, yes, they are a concern, but minimize them. And a really great way of doing that is allocating what I call worry time. So just because you can't control them doesn't mean they're not valid thoughts and concerns, but not allowing them to play full screen. But so if you allocate worry time, so for example, maybe half an hour to think, right, okay, so for me, it's when primary schools are going to reopen, because I'm homeschooling at the moment. That could play full screen all day and really derail my efforts and cause anxiety and stress. But actually, I'll allocate worry time. So I'll allocate half an hour at a certain point to do some research into when it's looking likely they'll reopen. It enables me to go there, but I'm in control. Because when you can become in control of your thoughts and how you're spending your time, putting your focus, that's when you can start to really combat those feelings of overwhelm and anxiety. So first of all, switching on self-awareness, what is filling your head, what's triggering that anxiety, and then being quite practical and mindful and ring fencing where you put your energy towards what, and focusing on what you can control.
Brilliant, thank you. That's really helpful. I suppose that's like writing your lists as well, and even ticking off the things that you've done and adding them to the list to make you feel like you were achieving things as well, which is definitely something that helps me. That was really useful.
Yeah, I do that.
Yeah.
I do that too. It's a good point what you mentioned about the news as well, because I think for a lot of people that is quite triggering, isn't it, at the moment? And you just end up going down this kind of wormhole of negativity, which we don't want. So
Absolutely.
I think as well, sometimes you're kind of doom scrolling on social media. So if you've just been scrolling for ages and it's just making you feel worse and worse and you're getting more anxious, but you can't stop scrolling, part of it is just sort of checking in with yourself about how it's making you feel, and do you feel better
Yeah.
than or do you feel worse? And if you feel worse, it's probably time for a break from that and redirecting to something else. Even they designed those to feel like you want to continue, so you sometimes have to be sort of exert quite a lot of control yourself to get yourself out of that scrolling, but it's a really useful thing to do sometimes, just to give yourself a break. I think as well, another thing that I think very much fits with what Rue was saying about noticing the things you can control and noticing the things you can't, is that right now there's so much we can't control. And one of the things I know about veterinary nurses particularly is that so good at being compassionate to everybody else around, and not always very good at being compassionate to themselves and being kind to themselves, and have incredibly high expectations of what they should be achieving all the time. And I think right now it's okay to not be achieving very much and to feel like everything's a little bit precarious and it's not managing, because frankly, if we were all managing brilliantly right now, it would be a bit weird. So,
yeah, and that's really important about that kind of switching on that contextual lens to stuff that you were able to do kind of quite kind of in your stride a year ago, 18 months ago. If you find them now more challenging, tricky, that isn't a sign that you're not doing well. You know, remember that we're operating in very, very different times now, and remembering that and being kind to yourself, as you say, Rosie, about your expectations and you know, what you've got in terms of your resources, mentally and physically, your mental resources, because it's so important to have that contextual awareness, and because that's all part of building resilience and adapting.
Totally. And one of the things we know is you know about like growth and thriving and being resilient, is that it happens much easier for people when they're in an atmosphere of support and kindness, not in a critical atmosphere. And so I sort of say, well, think about what it's like in your own head as well. Is it a place of criticism and beating yourself up, or is it a place of kindness and a bit of acceptance that this is a horrible year, it's unprecedented, it's really hard, and actually you've done amazingly to get up and have a shower this morning and get into work. That is pretty high achievement right now. So, you know, it's about being kind, and then actually you're more likely to be able to grow and develop when you are able to be kind to yourself in that way and have that compassion. But it sometimes takes a bit of a mindset shift for some of us, I think, because we're so kind of conditioned sometimes to give all our compassion to others and not keep it for ourselves at all.
Yeah.
It's the expectations, isn't it? We place such high expectations on ourselves, and then you punish yourself when you don't achieve it, and it's a really vicious circle.
To try and break that cycle, because often that inner voice and inner critic can be our own worst enemy, and self-sabotage can be a really kind of easy pitfall to fall into. A really good question to ask yourself if you're finding yourself caught into that cycle of behavior is, what would a friend say? So if you were to say to a friend, for example, I'm feeling really rubbish today, you know, I've not been able to do X, Y, and Z. I really don't think I coped with that situation very well. I could tell that, you know, I wasn't as rational as normal, or I wasn't particularly as patient as I would be with an owner, or I handle a dispute at work not very well, whatever it may be. Talk about it and say, I should have done better. What would a friend say? Because I can absolutely guarantee that a friend would answer rationally and with compassion, because they're not emotionally attached to the situation. And, you know, we've got a rational side of the brain and an emotional side of the brain. And when our inner critic is kicked in and all of those self-sabotaging thoughts, that's coming from our rational side of the brain, emotional side of the brain. So we need to try and kick in that rationality and that compassion, because a friend would say, okay, hang on a minute. It sounds like you're being really rough on yourself. It sounds like you had a lot on your plate today. You know, talk me through why you think you could have done better, and actually just start trying to click in that rational, helpful thinking can be really effective.
Yeah, it's taking that time to pause, isn't it? And just having that awareness to go, hold on a minute, this isn't serving me well. I'm not being kind to myself. What would I say to a friend?
Yeah, challenge those sabotaging thoughts, because that's where you start to rob the power.
Yeah, and I think really there's another part to that as well, isn't there? Because that's such a good thing, the perspective taking, it's such a strong thing to do. And I think one of the other ways that you can do that is kind of do it two ways. So not just what would a friend say to me, but then ask yourself, what would I say to a friend? Because if what you would say to a friend in the situation is different to what you're saying to yourself, that is something you need to notice, because it means you've got a difference to yourself than for everyone else. And when you have that, not always very helpful at all. We think it's us pushing ourselves, but actually it's us just being mean to ourselves. So yeah, if you say something different to your friend than you're saying to yourself, it's well worth doing what we were saying earlier, just stop and thinking, is this helpful? Because it usually isn't helpful. And so if it isn't helpful, it's then thinking, well, how can I shift this? So how can I shift this to be kinder to myself, to give myself a bit of a break on this? And then actually, when you are being kinder to yourself, you're actually much more able to achieve things and go on to do things, because you're not wasting your energy on that self-criticism.
Because yeah, if there is a question and the answer is actually this isn't helping me, then ask yourself the question, what would serve me well right now? Is it switching my phone off? Is it going having a soak in the bath? Is it ringing a messmate and having an absolute hoot and having a Zoom quiz? What would serve me well right now? And start looking for how you can start to kind of reframe and switch that perspective, which is so important, as Rosie says.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a question here, if that's okay. So my question is, do you have any hints and tips on what nurses can do in the morning to help ensure they arrive at work with a positive mindset, and really importantly, try and stay in that positive mindset? Because it's quite intense for us in practice at the moment. It's really not normal. It's not a normal situation to be in. And trying to stay positive can be quite a challenge.
Exactly. First of all, my mantra is, if you can win the morning, you will win the day. So highly resilient, productive, fulfilled people generally are winning their morning. So if you can get up and kind of set the rhythm, the pace, the perspective for that day, then you will be setting yourself up for a much more helpful day in terms of your mindset. So how can you do that? So first of all, think about what's going to fill your tank. So what is it when you wake up? How can you recharge and kind of get into a helpful zone? That could be exercise, meditation, reading, a healthy breakfast, a walk. So think about how you can really kickstart your energy and kind of your headspace first thing. Also practical things. Try and ditch the phone. Try and leave your phone downstairs at night. If you use it as an alarm, buy an alarm clock, £5 on Amazon. So try and keep your phone away. You've not got the notifications. You've not been picking it up and straight away glued. So try and do that to give yourself some headspace, that first 5-10 minutes, and use that time either mentally or in a little notepad by the side of your bed. Wake up and straight away focus on what 3 things do you want to achieve today? What 3 things are important to you? And I'm not talking about huge goals. I'm not talking about setting yourself up in the morning and things you must achieve. It could be take a lunch break, eat away, eat outside, go for a walk at lunch, or whatever it may be. Think about 3 things that could help you protect your mental health that day, but also for you to feel a sense of achievement. And also a really good one, and I remember many moons ago my coach telling me this, and it's always stuck with me. Be really mindful when you arrive at work, when you drive up or you walk up. Take a moment before you rush out. We all do the car quick, check your phone, run in. Take a moment and think, how do I want to show up today? Because remembering that you are in control of how you show up. Who do you want to be when you walk through that door? Because there's going to be a lot of external triggers that will come in. And if you're not careful, you can get swept up and be triggered into this kind of busy, stressed, anxious person, because people around you are busy and stressed and anxious. So being really mindful that, okay, how do I want to show up? I want to show up calm, positive, professional, and think about what that looks like for you. Again, it all goes back to that self-awareness about not allowing yourself to go into autopilot, being really mindful about, okay, how can I try and set myself up for success, rather than just hoping, I hope today's going to be all right, hoping I'm going to have a good day today, and kind of just letting it be in the lap of the gods. Recognizing that you do have control over the choices that you make. You do have control over how you react to certain situations, and not allowing kind of those external triggers. So to summarize, absolutely try and win the morning, try and set yourself up, and then just be really mindful about what you want to be, how you want to show up at work.
It's kind of being your own champion, really, isn't it? Yeah,
absolutely. And also, if there are certain situations or people in the work environment that do drain you, then try and limit your exposure if you can. You know, toxicity in relationships can be really quite draining. So, you know, obviously we can't always say, I'm not going to talk to this person, I'm going to try and not get into that situation, but just try. And if you know that certain situations generally stress you out or aren't great, leave you feeling drained, then just try and limit your exposure to those situations to protect yourself.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Some really good tips there. So I like the three things in the morning. That's a good one. I'm going to try and remember that.
Yeah.
We've had a question, and this is something that I know lots of people have issues with, including myself. Someone's asked, so this is for both Rosie and Rue. Someone said, I often have problems sleeping as my brain is still active. What's best to do before sort of bedtime to try and kind of switch off, essentially? I don't know, Rosie, do you have any tips for that at all?
Yes, such things that loads of people experience, and I think particularly at the moment where we're all working difficult situations or managing very difficult situations at home, there's just so much going on that we haven't actually had a lot of time to process. And so it's not a surprise that when we finally stop doing something and try and sleep, our brain's like, whoa, I've not thought about all this yet, and it's just keeping going. And I think there's a few different approaches you can take to this. So one of the ones is sometimes learning some thinking strategies to try and help. So if the thoughts that are going around are quite destructive, what we would call ruminative thoughts, so they're sort of quite negative thoughts that are going round and round, you can learn some techniques to try and stop or interrupt those. So something called a stop strategy, where you try and notice it's not a helpful thought. You imagine a stop sign, you say to yourself, stop, and you redirect to another thought about something that is much calmer or more pleasant or more interesting. And it's hard, and you often have to do it lots of times, but it's accepting that, yeah, this is something I could worry about. It's a bit like the worry parking that Rue was talking about, but slightly different. It's actually a stop one, and I'm going to re-divert to something else. If it's sort of general thoughts in the day, one of the things that can really help is doing some exercise in the morning. So morning exercise is great for you being able to sleep in the afternoon, evening. So if you're doing nights, particularly and your sleep's being disrupted, morning exercise can really help get you back into that routine. Another thing is, like we were saying, thinking about your screen exposure before bed. So ideally not even having your screen in the same room, because it's not just about the blue light. It's actually about you're with your phone that you associate with being awake and having to do things and work and everything else. And actually, because it's there, it's going to be making you think about work. So actually having it somewhere away and having a different alarm clock. I know as well, for people with young children or caring responsibilities at home, it can just be so hard. And so trying to keep some kind of sleep routine, so roughly going to bed at the same time when you can and roughly getting up at the same time, even if you can't sleep, just getting into that routine can be helpful and can help your brain to get a bit of rest. Another thing that can sometimes help is actually doing something that creates what we call psychological flow. So doing something in the evening before bed that you'll get totally absorbed in and you lose track of time, and it can just sometimes interrupt those worries for a bit. So something that actually enables you to forget everything else that's going on. So for some people it's like playing music or doing some art, but actually making 10-15 minutes just purely for yourself to get a bit of an escape in the evening, just so your brain's had a little time to switch off. It can just help you to then get off to sleep later on. And I think also just not to beat yourself up if you find that you can't sleep. Just again, go easy on yourself, just lie there and let yourself relax. Even if you can't sleep, just being in bed, just trying to relax, just taking some time to let your body rest can help as well. Some people find that like relaxation exercises can help, and there's some really good ones if you look up some of the advice around sleep. I'm sure we can post some chat for that.
It's easy to get angry with yourself when you can't sleep, isn't it? And then of course that makes everything a million times worse. So it goes back to being kind, doesn't it, I suppose?
Absolutely echo everything Rosie's just said. It's something that I always helps me remember to kind of lower my expectations about I should be able to go from 100 miles an hour in the fast lane to then sleep in the lay-by. But hang on a minute. We need to spend time to kind of pull in. We are human beings, not human doings. We're not designed to be plugged in, and constantly doing, and then we unplug and we sleep. is that we're human beings. So we, you know, exactly all the strategies about how can you wind down, how can you switch lanes, how can you start to get, and there's loads of the practical ways as well, in terms of definitely no screens, pillow spray, the meditation apps. So I think it's playing around with what's going to be right for you, what's going to help you. There is no right or wrong way that you must meditate half an hour before bed, or you must just experiment and like be kind with yourself. Let's just say, well, what's going to work for me? But sleep is so important, and trying to get 7-8 hours sleep if you can. It may sound boring, but sleep and exercise will serve you very, very well in current times.
Eating meals so that you're not hungry. I know I turn evil and have no tolerance or patience if I've not eaten, let alone sleep or do anything else constructive. But it's something we forget in a busy day, is to make sure that we get something to eat, and so we've got the energy to carry on as well, really. And
again, that could be kind of part of that win your morning, win the day, and what 3 things do I want to achieve, that kind of food preps. I'm going to wake up and I'm going to make myself for lunch, I'm going to make myself some easy snacks. So just kind of really thinking about, you know, it doesn't have to be those huge goals for the day. It could be, I'm going to take 10 minutes, I'm going to food prep first thing, so then at 11 I'm not sitting there kind of having half a Mars bar and then feeling rubbish.
The quick hit that a Mars bar gives.
And then the afternoon slump usually, isn't it? I know that only too well. We got a question here for Rosie, haven't we, Jo? I think.
We'll answer that in the Q&A box, I think. But
fine. Okay, sorry.
Questions that have come in, and they were kind of around a question that you wanted to ask as well anyway, Alex, about being overwhelmed and anxious. And they focus on a few different things, but I think they are all a form of anxiety, really. So there's one about finding it really difficult to accept compliments and feeling that everybody is very negative about them, and they view everything as, they just absorb sort of negative worry and anxiety. And then there's one about constructive criticism as well, and I suppose where we've got more tolerance and we've got more availability, we can accept it, but right now when we're pushed down flat, it's become very difficult for some people to accept that. So I guess it's how do we cope with that anxiety and deal with the sort of positive and negative impact of our usual day-to-day tasks and conversations with our colleagues as well.
Do you want to go first, Rhea, or shall I?
I feel like I've spoken a lot. Yeah, you carry on now. Chip in.
Okay, great. So I'm kind of really interested by a number of bits of that, and I think so many people will relate to this. And one of the things that I think, you know, a lot of us have an awareness of at the moment is that so many people are feeling quite anxious and quite overwhelmed, and to an extent that's really normal in the situation we're in. That's kind of, you know, you're doing well if you're feeling anxious and a bit overwhelmed. We all are at the moment, and although it might seem like everyone else is doing really great, a lot of that is kind of people holding it together. I think one of the things, there's a really interesting thing in there about accepting compliments, which I know particularly actually women in our industry are conditioned by society to kind of knock things back and say, oh, actually, I don't really deserve that, or I shouldn't put myself forward for this. And actually, one of the things that can be really helpful is finding a trusted accountability friend who you can talk to about this kind of stuff, and actually start practicing with them of accepting compliments. And it might sound a bit weird, but it is totally worth doing. It transformed things for me a few years ago, because I used to be one of those people who always kind of said, oh, well, it wasn't actually me, I didn't really do that, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And actually my friend pointed out to me that, you know, this is like giving you a present and you're just giving it back to me. So, you know, you're not accepting it. So try and accept it for me instead. And so we both started trying to do that. And actually, it is so nice when you give someone a compliment and they say, oh, thank you. You know, it's such a nice thing for me giving a compliment. So I now try and think about, well, you know, this person's given me a lovely compliment. I want them to feel nice about having done that. So I'm just going to thank them. And actually, it's a mindset shift, but it can make a difference. And I think it can make a difference as a role model as well, because we all have this, you know, we all have students who are working with us and others. And if they see us being able to be competent and confident and to accept compliments graciously, then actually that's incredibly helpful for them about sort of leadership within the space, within our workplaces. And so it might not feel like an easy time to start that right now, but find a buddy who'll help you, and they'll remind you when you're not doing it, and somebody you can actually talk to in that way. And it can be an interesting exercise in terms of how it feels. So notice how it feels when someone else accepts your compliment as well. I think with the anxiety, one of the really key things at the moment is understanding and getting a sense of, is this kind of normal anxiety for the situation, which, you know, is something a lot of us are experiencing, or is this actually anxiety that maybe, you know, I need to be sharing with someone else to get some more support with? So not just sharing with a friend, but maybe sharing with a professional, or maybe speaking to somebody to get some professional advice about it, whether that's a counsellor or a therapist or your GP. And the sort of the key, I would say, for that part is thinking about how much it's affecting your function kind of day to day. So if it's anxiety, but you feel like you're coping, just feeling it a lot and talking to yourself, and you can get a break from it. But if you're feeling like, you know, it's changing how you're eating, it's changing how you're sleeping, it's meaning you can't concentrate at work, all those kinds of things, and it's going on for more than a couple of weeks like that, then it definitely is worth checking in with a professional about it. There's absolutely no shame in doing that. And I think it's, anxiety can be, you know, you often hear people say things like it's just anxiety. Anxiety can be one of the most debilitating mental health conditions that you can have, because it can totally change your ability to manage in different situations. And, you know, and it's a very, very treatable thing as well. There are things that can help. You can learn skills. Sometimes medicine helps. Sometimes recognizing what's caused it in a situation and getting that situation change can help. And sometimes it can be specific types of anxiety. So anxiety disorders, as they're called, are things like obsessive compulsive disorder or panic disorder or generalized anxiety, and understanding if maybe one of those is involved as well, because there's specific things that can help them. So not just suffering in silence is really important with anxiety too.
And I think being able to check in as well, because we're quite good at kind of catastrophizing one bad day or one, you know, a couple of bad days. You think, oh no, this has all gone wrong, I'm really not coping very well. And so again, that kind of check in with yourself is ask yourself in the morning, you know, how full is my tank today? Where am I? 0 to 10. So 0 is I'm really struggling, like just getting out of bed is going to be tough. 10 is I'm absolutely smashing it. And it's again, the more, I know I keep on hammering home this point, but it's so important. The more you can switch on to self-awareness means you can be more mindful about what you're thinking, feeling, and how you're showing up. So just knowing where you are in that tank, and if you are routinely kind of lower down the tank, that could well be a signal that you need some support. You need to check in, whether that's with friends or professional help. There's something I just want to add about the accepting compliments and what Rosie mentioned about kind of buddying up with somebody and kind of helping each other along. There's a really great, and I can send it to you, Alex and Joe, afterwards if you want to share with attendees, a really great exercise that I use for people that are looking to challenge and combat imposter thinking. So imposter syndrome, that I'm not enough, I'm not good. It's all linked to that self-worth and not valuing competence and ability, which is all linked to the compliments and not feeling that they're either joking or not meant for me, or I don't deserve that. It's called the 555, and there's 5 questions that you ask 5 people that you trust and respect their opinions, and it takes 5 minutes. And asking those people those questions about you, and then seeing the results, and it can feel very indulgent and really quite scary, but actually when you see those responses coming in, it can be absolutely to help switch that mindset and help you with that free framing. Think, wow, okay, because those people will help highlight and shine a spotlight on your self-worth and on, you know, it's a way of kind of formally organizing compliments, I suppose, but it's really effective. And I've worked with some people who I've suggested that as homework for them, and they've looked at me like I'm absolutely crazy and kind of just gone into this state of panic. And they said, well, I'll ask 2 people, and then I've checked in with them a week later and they've asked 15 people, like, whoa, this is amazing. Because as long as you ask people and who you trust and respect them. Oh, we've lost Rosie, I think.
Yeah.
Got an internet issue. I'll keep an eye for her.
But yeah,
hopefully she'll come back in a sec.
Yeah.
I will send that across to you, ladies. It's just a little one-pager, and then it's a really effective exercise to.
We could pop that in the forum, couldn't we, Joe? In the members forum. Yeah, we'll do that if people want to see it.
Yeah.
We've had lots of questions, haven't we, Joe?
Yeah, we have. There was one that I just wanted to cover, because we talked about getting to sleep and struggling if you've got a very active brain, but then somebody's popped in about sort of the other side of that, where all you feel like you want to do is sleep, basically like feeling like going into hibernation, I guess, because it's too exhausting functioning in the day. So is there anything that we can do to sort of support and help get out of that cycle as well?
Yeah, and that's really important, because if you're in that place, then that is a road to burnout. You know, that overwhelm, that, as I talked about, that 100 miles an hour in the fast lane all the time is not sustainable. And so being able to move away from that, think about, you know, often when things stop adding up, what you need to start subtracting, what can you take away? So think about everything that's on your plate right now, and what can you trade? What could you actually park? What do you actually can take a break from? So really trying to look at, you can only do so much. So just trying to subtract, trying to take some of that pressure away, and talking, and if it's work pressure, saying, actually, can you help me on that, or can I push that back, or can we change the deadline? If there's things kind of, you know, we're all juggling a lot of plates at work, homeschooling, you know, there's lots going on right now. And so actually just really being mindful that we need to start subtracting.
It's been hard to get motivated, I think, for a lot of people. It's having that motivation and then beating yourself up because you're not doing what you think you should be doing. I think a lot of people have been doing that. I think Rosie's back now. She looks like she's a bit dark there. You all right, Rosie? Oh, she's on mute. You're on mute.
On a phone, I think.
Oh, she's come back on her phone.
Yeah, and the
Technology.
thing, if you are feeling kind of in hibernation mode and this is just really, really hard, try and remember that action comes before motivation. So actually, if you just want to get back under that duvet, try, and whether it's finding accountability with a mate to meet, socially distanced walk, getting out for half an hour, you know, get those endorphins moving, you know, get that fresh air. You will never come back from a half an hour walk and say, I wish I hadn't done that. You just won't.
No.
So it's about just trusting and leaning into it and going, okay, I really can't be bothered to do this. I really can't bother to cook a meal or to go for a walk, but just go for it. Just lean in and know that it will help you, because it's breaking that cycle. It's breaking that unhelpful cycle that can be really quite, you know, debilitating and demotivating. Are you okay, Rosie?
I am. We've had a really big power cut in my part of Edinburgh, and so my internet went and my computer went and my lights have gone.
Came back pretty quickly though. I'm really impressed.
Well, do you know, it's the first time this one's happened, but I've now got my candles on, so my dog and I sat here with the candles.
Oh, bless you.
The joy.
So yeah, I'm sorry, it's going to be a little bit strange, but I'm here.
It's all right, we can see you fine, don't worry.
And we can see you fine as well.
Hear you fine, yeah.
Great.
There's another couple of questions just that I think still relate to it all as well, and coping with the whole situation that we're in. But this one's from a slightly different point of view rather than being directly personal. It's about when you're managing teams and you feel that you're giving sort of everything to your team and you're not leaving anything left for yourself. And some of the people that are maybe doing this perhaps live on their own, they don't have any of that support around them, so they're giving everything they've got to their team. How can they sort of balance that themselves without it being so completely draining and exhausting because they're giving everything into their team? And sometimes when you give all of that to your team, you still get all that negative response from your team because they're feeling it as well. So that's sort of like a twofold drain, I suppose, on your emotional well-being.
Yeah, I think this is such a good question, because I think it's one of the things we don't often talk about is how difficult this stuff can be for leaders. And I think leadership in the veterinary professions, in nursing and in vet, can actually be quite a lonely place, because of the structure of the way our practices work and the way our roles work, there often isn't good support built in for leaders in the way that there is in other professions, maybe like medicine or maybe like human nursing. There's often more supportive structures in place. And so one of the things that I think is really important for people in leadership roles is to have those peers supporting them. So to have a small group of people at your kind of level who you can talk to unconditionally about what's going on and how you're finding it and how you're feeling, so you can kind of share notes. And so I was in this situation a number of years ago. I didn't have anyone at my level who I could really talk to in the organisation I was in, and so I created a small group of people. We didn't all work together at the time. We're actually in different, so they're not all vets or veterinary nurses, just a small group of people, and we talk once a month about what's going on for us, and we can talk in between, and we talk about our difficulties, and it's just a totally safe space to explore that stuff. And I think that kind of peer group can be so important. So just trusted friends, trusted colleagues who you can talk to about work and challenge yourself, and just have a meeting once a month. We used to meet and go out for a drink or go for dinner, but now you know, we meet on Zoom or we meet on the phone, and we have a WhatsApp group, and we can just talk about it. I also think another thing that can help is, one of the things we've kind of lost, I think, in the pandemic is, because it's so much harder to kind of just have a casual conversation with someone. All of our conversations are like scheduled, so they're what you would call transactional. They're all about something. And actually those kind of unscheduled conversations are actually some of the most important in the workplace for supporting us, and especially for leaders, often just those kind of casual, more relaxed conversations that aren't all meetings. And so I think one of the things that's really helped me is doing like a 3-minute check-in with someone that is kind of at my level during the day. So maybe not somebody I manage necessarily within the organisation. So just doing a 3-minute check-in, just to kind of have a moan about what's going on, or let off some steam, or just to say, hey, actually today's going really well. And just time limiting it to 3 minutes, because I know how busy it is, and just a little check-in, even if you haven't got much to say, just so you've got that kind of peer support around. I think that can be really helpful too. I think as well, within organisations, making sure that leaders do have that support at work. So the people who line manage, the you know, head nurses, incredibly important roles, and make sure you've got that line management there, make sure that communication's there. And if it's not, then try and prioritise finding it, because it's so important we have that support as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've nothing more specifically to add. Exactly what Rosie's just said. You know, I coach a lot of leaders in lots of different industries, and it doesn't matter which industry you're in, it's exactly the same. Peer support, having that safe space is so important, where you can ask for input, have a sounding board, have that vent. It can be very isolating as a leader, and extremely pressured. And also right here, right now, where we are, our teams are becoming more and more demanding, because they need you, they need leadership. So it's really important to understand that you do need to fill your tank as well.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, Joe's in a sort of managerial position, aren't you, Joe? And I've been in a head nurse position before, and you do feel like you're being tugged in all sorts of different directions, and everyone wants a bit of you, and it can be really challenging.
Sometimes you just want to come home and do nothing, but it's hard as well. Even if you come home and you're on your own, then you've got no distraction, your brain's kind of all just on it. But even if you come home and, like, I've got 2 young kids that suddenly want everything as well, and you've just given everything in work, and then you get home and have to give everything again, and it can become very, very difficult. But I think they're really good advice, and I've definitely used that, having the conversations with friends in similar roles, and even just that release, isn't it? That just that release of get it off your chest, and once you've talked about it, it never actually seems as bad as it is. That's a huge thing. You've let it out and you're like, what am I actually like bothered about?
And you know what, if you haven't got friends or peers, journal it, get it out. You know, getting it out of here in itself, just that act is so powerful, because up here it starts to play games, we get all these narratives that are associated with it. Getting it out onto paper also helps us switch onto rational mode, because you're seeing it in black and white and go, okay, well, that isn't too bad, or oh wow, I can see why this has stressed me. You know, get it out of here is really important, whether it's talking, writing it down.
Yeah, definitely. Brilliant,
thank you. Oops, sorry, I just managed to maximize the questions then, and everybody's face disappeared. That was scary. Whew. Okay, we've got a question here, really good question actually. Somebody's asked, are there any apps or podcasts that can be recommended for positivity and creating a good mindset for the day? I travel for 40 minutes each way to work, so feel that's kind of their me time. They get in the car, could be filled with something that might be able to help them on days where they're not quite feeling themselves. Have either of you got any recommendations?
Oh, so there's following on from the theme just now of leadership feeling isolating, but also kind of juggling that work-life balance, expectations of ourselves. It's a really great podcast, and there's also a book, and it's called The Squiggly Career. So it feels like it's going to be kind of a career coaches, but it's a couple of ladies. I'm very lucky enough to call one of them a good friend, and check it out. So they're Time bestseller, their book's Times bestseller. They've just done a TED Talk, which is going to be live at the end of the month, but their podcast is extremely useful and packed with practical ways to goal set, to manage work-life balance, to find accountability buddies. There's lots of good stuff in there about how to manage work-life balance and how to be productive and enjoy what you spend so much time at work to make sure it's working for you. So that would be definitely one in terms of practical kind of coaching tips. I don't know if you've got any others, Rosie, in terms of positivity.
Yeah, so I suppose one of the things I would do is as well to just go back to thinking about what your escape is. So actually use that time as a little bit of an escape from putting pressure on yourself. So find what it is that you enjoy, whether it's audio books, whether it's a sport, whether it's some interest you have about art or travel, and actually listen to podcasts about that. So it's nothing to do with work or expectations of yourself. It's actually just, you know what, I really love this thing and it's my thing, and I'm going to think about that. So my kind of indulgence is sport. I really love sport, and so I just let myself listen to stuff about sport. So I listen to running podcasts, and I talk about running, and I know lots of people hate running, but it's my time, because I go with my dog. I've got a Weimaraner, so I actually need to run for hours every day because otherwise it would all go wrong. And so that's why she's asleep nice and quiet behind me, because she's been running. So yeah, I love doing that. And do you know what, sometimes I just do that to help me to be in a more positive mindset, and it does help just to have that escape. And also I think one of the things in vet and nursing that we so often do is we let our whole identity be about our work, and it's because we have to work so hard, and we do so many hours, and we do so much caring for other people, and it does help for well-being for a while, because our work identity does give us a lot of meaning. It means we can help people, we can do lots of other things. Oh, sorry, it's even more dark, my candle's not feeling very well, I'll just move it. But the difficulty is with doing that, with having your work identity as your only identity, is that if something goes wrong at work, whether it's a client complaining unreasonably, whether it's a poor outcome, if your work identity is all you have, then the thing that's gone wrong at work will kind of cut right to the middle of who you are. And it really destabilizes things. Whereas if you have lots of aspects of you, so they're not all to do with work. So you're a fantastic mum, and you do things, to do with the kids that are really, not at all to do with that. And or you do music, or you help out with brownies or whatever it is, then if something attacks you at work, or feels like it's attacking at your work identity, it doesn't matter as much, because you have more psychological protection, because you're kind of broader, you've got more things going on. So it's not that you have to ditch it and be a professional brownie leader. It's if something goes wrong at work, it's just that actually you'll be a bit more in control, because you feel a bit more competent and capable in a way that's not associated with work. So I actually think spending time on non-work things is a big investment in your well-being. So think about all those non-work things that you can do that might help, and let yourself do some of them on the way in and out.
Yeah, and I'd also say about music, don't underestimate the power of music. Turn it up loud, sing, cry, shout, but my God, if it really can be mood inducing. I mean, put positive stuff. I mean, recently I've been downloading loads of albums kind of from my youth, and just rocking them out in the car. Yeah, I mean, I'm a massive Oasis fan, so I'm just rocking away in the car. But it lifts your mood. It has that chemical reaction. So don't, as Rosie said, even though it is valuable time, and absolutely it's great for some kind of podcast and personal development, also don't be afraid just to turn the music up and have a good old dance and sing.
Yeah. Have a sing to yourself in your car and hope nobody's watching.
The beauty of living in the country. Yeah, I just going around the lanes singing to myself.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thanks, ladies. Some really good points there. And I think Rosie saying about doing something that's not veterinary kind of related, so important, because it is all consuming our job, isn't it, sometimes? So yeah, I think that's really, really important. Okay, we do have some more questions, and then I think we were just going to ask Rosie a bit more about Vetlife, but one of the questions we've had is somebody said they've been signed off for work for 2 weeks due to depression and anxiety issues. Have you got any tips or comments on how I can adapt my life in these 2 weeks? Oh, I've lost it. Hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Did you just hide it from me then, Jo? Is it gone into the answered bit?
Yeah. Yeah, it has. It says, have you got any tips or comments on how I can adapt my life in these 2 weeks to be able to cope with the return to work? And we've got one as well, which is similar about shielding. So somebody that's shielding and then that guilt and not being in work with the team. So I think they kind of go quite well together.
Yeah, sure. No, so first of all, to the person who's been signed off, just well done for going to speak to somebody about it. That is an incredibly brave and strong thing to do. And I know it often doesn't feel like that in our jobs, but it really is. So well done for going to speak to your GP or whatever, whoever it was that you spoke to get signed off. I think it's a really, really good step. And it's the first step to things getting better. I would say at this stage, don't put too much pressure on yourself. You know, think about how long it's taken for things to get like this, and is 2 weeks a reasonable ask for you to turn it all around? So do that friend test. Would you think your friend could turn this whole thing around in 2 weeks? Because one of the things that you really don't want to do is like set yourself up to not achieve your goals. So you want small achievable goals. So right now it's about feeling okay again. It's not about changing your whole life, and things will get better, I promise they do, but it can take a little while. So it's about being kind to yourself, about looking after yourself, about starting to think about, you know, is this like a thinking about the things that contributed, if that's possible. So was it stresses outside of work that were contributing, or was it stresses in work? And if it was stresses in work that were contributing, and sometimes it's neither of those, sometimes it's not a clear reason, and sometimes it's something that things like medicine or things like talking therapy can help with. But if you think it is stress related, then think about, is it things in work or is it things outside of work? Because if it's things in work, then to go back to work, you need to think about, well, how can we remove those triggers, or how can we change those triggers? And that is a conversation that you can have with your manager when you're going back to work, is thinking about, well, how can we make this work this time? And that's a really important conversation for managers to be able to have as well when someone comes back, is thinking about, you know, was there anything about work that contributed to making things harder? And if so, you know, what can we do to help? What can we do to change that? I think as well during the 2 weeks is remember that depression and anxiety are like other illnesses. And if you wouldn't, you know, beat yourself up about, you know, not having achieved full change after like having surgery on your back, or after having abdominal surgery, or after treatment for another serious condition, you know, it's the same with depression and anxiety. Sometimes you need help from outside. So sometimes it's not something you can turn around completely on your own, but that help is there. Sometimes it takes a while to find, but it will be there, and things will get better. For the person who is shielding, I would say it's so hard, and this is so under recognized at the moment for people who are struggling. I think one of the groups who struggle the most, I think, during the pandemic have been people who are shielding at home, because they're kind of not seen, and they're not included in so much of what we talk about in this, and you know, things are incredibly difficult. I would say it really is worth, even if you're furloughed, thinking about how you can connect with work if work is helpful. So it's kind of a bit of a misconception that if you're furloughed, you can't be in touch with work at all. That's not the case. You can be in touch with work. You shouldn't be doing your previous job, but there might be some other aspect of volunteering that's not related to your previous job that is possible. It's also possible to just be in touch socially with people. And if you're managing someone who's furloughed or who is shielding, it's so important that you are including them still socially. The other thing I would say for the person who's shielding is think about the evidence on thriving. So thriving is a sort of a positive mindset state that we think about in the workplace usually. And the two elements of that, the two dimensions that are really key, are growth and development, and feeling alive. So your challenge while shielding is to find ways you can grow and develop, and find things that make you feel alive. So that's what people who thrive have at work. They have things that make them feel alive about their job, and they have ways they can grow and develop. So it's trying to recreate that in this really weird situation we're all in. And I feel a bit weird sitting in a power cut talking about this, because it feels extra dystopian here right now. But so the growth and development might be a bit of study, might be a bit of reading, but again, realistic goals. And the thing that makes you feel alive, it might not be connected to work at all. You know, you're shielding at home, it might be connected to something else. So it might be dance, it might be music, it might be art, it might be connecting with your own animals, it might be being creative and making something, just finding something that makes you feel alive in some way that you can grow. And that will help you to hold in there and hold on to that hope that things are going to go back to something that's more recognizable.
I think when we are having to press pause on so much at the moment, finding ways to press play still is really, really important. And not kind of just think, well, there's nothing to do. You know, there's always places you can press play. If it's a hobby, if it's some of the fantastic examples Rosie just gave. So yes, you are shielding. And it's really tough, and don't underestimate that, but still you'll be able to press play. What can you do to be energized, to still feel plugged in all areas of your life? It's super important that you kind of reevaluate that and look at that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's really helpful. Thank you to both of you for that. Jo, should we we're coming towards the end of the webinar now. There was just a few questions that I have for Rosie with regards to Vetlife, if that's okay, Rosie.
Oh, yes, please.
So people have been talking, or nurses have been mentioning about their colleagues. Is it okay for a nurse to contact Vetlife if they're worried about a colleague? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, very much so. And one of the things I really, really, really want nurses to tell your colleagues about is that they can contact Vetlife as well, because I think Vetlife in the past hasn't been good enough at telling nurses that, you know, we're here for them as well. And, you know, like so many things in vet, nurses don't get mentioned enough. And absolutely, nurses can contact Vetlife. Nurses can also contact when they're concerned about a colleague. A lot of the calls we get are people saying, hey, you know, I'm just really worried about my colleague, this has been happening, and how can I support them? That is a totally legitimate reason to call. It's also fine for people to call if they're worried about calling and sort of say, hey, I don't know what to say, I'm just kind of trying this out, it's just been a bit of a bad day. And you can call as many times as you want. There is no time limit. We don't have any pressure that, oh, you know, you can call 6 times and that's it. It's not like that. You can call as long as you need or as short as you need. You know, if the conversation's not going how you want, you can just hang up as well. You don't have to think of a way to get out of the phone call. You can just hang up on us. We're used to it. It's fine. You can also email us, and when you email us, you do it via our webpage. And one of the advantages about that is you can actually make up a username so we can't see your email address. So you can call yourself Batman or whatever, and we're not going to ask for your name, we're not going to ask for your number, you know, your BVNA number or your RCVS number. We're not going to ask for any evidence of anything at all. So you can just talk to us about whatever you want to.
Okay, and sorry, go on, Jo.
Just about nurses and stuff contacting Vetlife, is it for the whole vet team or is it just vets and nurses? Because we've got about...
So, a really good question, Jo. Thank you for asking this. So, Vetlife Helpline is for anybody who can in any way connect themselves to the veterinary professions, the veterinary industry, veterinary practices. So we get calls from groomers in vet practices, we get calls from reps, we get calls from people who teach, you know, get calls from people in loads of different roles. So everybody in a vet practice, you know, front of house staff, everybody. The only parts of the service that are restricted to vets and nurses only is the Vetlife Health Support Service. And that's the professional mental health service that is available to people who've got what we call unmet mental health needs. So if for some reason you haven't been able to access the right mental health support where you are, we can refer you through to our Vetlife Health Support Service, which is mental health professionals. And that's only available to vets and nurses just because of the way our charity is funded. That's restricted. So yeah, but the helpline is available to everybody.
That's brilliant to know. Thank you.
Was there anything else you wanted to ask Jo at all before we do this final slide and then
no, I think
that's
covered. Just letting everybody know that Vetlife is accessible to all, and that bit for vets and nurses, I wasn't really aware of that was there either, as part of the charity. It's such a huge thing to know that that's there. So we'll make sure all of this is shared kind of in our members forum as well. But obviously there's the Vetlife website that you can all go on to and have a look and see what's available if you need it. Thank you for that, Rosie.
No, that's okay, thank you. And one last thing to say is that also we have nurses as volunteers on Helpline, and we're always interested if anybody's interested in volunteering with Helpline. You know, we love hearing from nurses, and we actively try and recruit nurses because we support nurses. We need to understand the issues that nurses face, and we have amazing nurse volunteers on Helpline, as I'm sure you know, some amazing people in your profession, and we're very, very lucky to have some of them on Helpline. So if any nurses are interested in volunteering, go and have a look at our website. We actively welcome and encourage applications from nurses, and we will try and support you through the process as much as we can. So yeah, please apply. We would love to hear from you. We're doing training at the moment through lockdowns. We're doing remote training at the moment, so if somebody's, you know, at home, we can sort things out there as well.
Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm just going to get this our final slide up before we thank you both. You've both been amazing, but I just wanted to show our delegates or people that are watching a little bit about the BVNA, so just bear with me 1 second. Hopefully it'll work. It's working, hurrah. Phew. So just to give our members a brief update here, our next BVNA webinar is on Wednesday the 24th of March, and it's a really good one. I've actually seen this webinar before and it's really good. I've got a big passion for behaviour, so this is all about behaviour in practice and reducing sort of anxiety and fear in our inpatients, so that's a really good one to look out for. We've also got the oral care certificate, which has been super popular. That's starting on the 1st of March. And then VNAM, Veterinary Nurse Awareness Month, is starting in May, so be prepared for that because that's going to be amazing. Did you want to add anything about VNAM, Jo, or we just...
No, just watch the space.
Yeah, watch this space. It's going to be a good one. Also, to just remind our members that we do have the BVNA advisory support line, is for members only. You can get more details about that from the members forum. We've also put the information for Vetlife on there, the number and also the web address too, and then also Rue's sort of website as well on there for those of you if you wanted to have a look at that. So I hope that's okay, Jo. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I just add about BVNA Congress, which we're really hoping goes ahead in sort of some version of a live event, in face-to-face event in October. It's been designed as a hybrid event, so it will be available online as well. And we're going to have a mix of online and in-person speakers. That's the 2nd to the 4th of October. So just keep everything crossed that we can get sort of face-to-face and have some fun and interaction again. But it is there. It's being designed at the moment. It's got a really, really good lineup, and tickets go on sale in May, so just keep an eye out for that one as well. We're very excited about it.
Yes, it'd be great to actually see people, hopefully. Fingers crossed. It'd be amazing. Oh, well, I just wanted to say a massive thank you to our two guest speakers this evening. You've both been awesome. I knew you would be. So thank you so much for all of your advice and hints and tips. Lots of people saying thank you in the comments. Yeah, just a really big thank you. Jo, do you want to?
Yeah, thank you. Got loads of feedback in the comments and on the questions as well, saying thank you. Just to remind everybody, I've put it in the chat as well, that this is recorded, so you can watch it again. I know it's quite a lot to take in an hour's space, and it might not all feel relevant to you, but it may do at different parts, so it's always something good to look back on. All of the links we're going to try and share in our members forum, so that it's available for everybody as well. But thank you so much, Rue and Rosie. It was brilliant to have you on. It was a really, really good webinar. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks
well
for
done,
having
Rosie.
us. Yeah.
You've amazing professionalism there.
Very dark in my house.
Thank you so
I've had
much,
these
ladies.
candles out. Luckily, I've had these candles out in lockdown for like relaxation. So I was like, it smells very relaxing.
Brilliant. Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much. Have a lovely rest of your evening. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.